Craft Coffee Chats with Richard Foote and Hanny Newton. Hello everyone, so my name is Richard Foote and I'm going to be chatting to various makers, and my first conversation is with Hanny Newton, and so welcome Hanny. You can say hello.
I wasn't sure whether you were just like carrying on.
Going for it. So
always
so
lovely to chat with
I've known Hanny for quite a while, and Hanny is a goldwork embroiderer. And so maybe for the uninitiated, Hanny, do you want to describe what goldworking is and how you got into it?
Goldwork's a form of hand embroidery. It's existed since even before like the 1300s. But yeah, modern day sort of, it's using threads of silver, copper, gold. I use tin sometimes, sort of, like anything with a long sort of heritage, it becomes sort of more experimental and less defined as it goes. So for me, it's about using like metals and threads in interesting ways, capturing the light, using the sort of sculptural qualities of them. In interesting ways, and pushing a traditional craft, really.
Excellent. Yeah. And I'm sure on a sunny day like today, your work is glistening. Amazing. Because like the gold work that I'm familiar with is not only your work, but is all that kind of ceremonial kind of costume kind of sort of traditional kind of gold work, but you're very much taking it in a contemporary, using contemporary sort of designs in your work and inspiration to sort of push it in a slightly different direction, would I say? Is that right?
Definitely, yeah, that's right. I mean, it's been used in sort of, for royalty and for ecclesiastical garments and for military. Like it has those very sort of exclusive, very like regal connotations. But the actual materials themselves are what excite me. And it's about sort of finding ways of reimagining and carrying on, like, for me, like a tradition should be breathing and living and not one like defined set of rules that can't be questioned.
Okay. And so how did your sort of creative journey sort of, where did it begin?
So I'd always loved using my hands. When I was younger, I was always baking, doing a lot of baking, a lot of sort of like a little bit of crafty things, but I never considered myself an artist, or I never considered that I'd sort of push it, and it just sort of naturally unfolded in a way. So I'd gone and studied really academic subject. I was at Manchester studying comparative religion and social anthropology when I was 19, and it just felt wrong. I did not feel engaged with it, and I couldn't sort of focus on it, I suppose. I didn't have a passion for it, and I tried, and I ended up dropping out after 2 years because it just did nothing for me. And I just sort of had a couple of gap years and was like not really, just allowing that I would find. I think I didn't feel a pressure at that age like I would, like I think I do now in my mid-30s. At that age, I was just like, just see what happens, really. I'll just go and have adventures. So I spent some time in Monaco working as an au pair. Before that, I was in Thailand, volunteering in an orphanage. It ended up back in Shrewsbury working in Wetherspoons as a chef. And then I found myself in a Steiner community. Rudolf Steiner was like a sort of, he'd see it as like a spiritual science, I suppose. But anyway, so I was working in this sort of slightly alternative educational setting with special needs teenagers. It was really intense voluntary work for like, if the road's noisy, let me know. For like a year and a half. And I didn't realize at the time what an introvert I was, like how I needed my own space. It was like super like communal living. So it's like 16 of us living in a house, like half SEN, like, you know, special educational needs, and half as sort of volunteers and people who live there, you know, from all around the world. And, you know, it was an amazing experience, but looking back, it was not like a good match for me, I suppose. And I just found myself stitching any free moment I had. I would be in my room embroidering something. I can't even remember why the thought came about. It was something my grandma taught me, and it was something I always like loved, and she did a lot of embroidery, and I used to go to Embroiderers Guild. But it just happened. Sort of, I allowed that I would find something, and it just felt right. And the first piece I made was like a meter long piece of cross stitch ribbon with houses on, and it was really small, so I could carry it around with me. So I took it places that I'd go, and I'd stitch, you know, different houses, places I knew, places I imagined, like, and by the end I was just like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I love this, and I was really excited about it. But I didn't know anyone growing up who was an artist or made it as an artist. You know, it come from quite a conventional, you know, teachers and nurses and all that sort of thing. So a friend of mine in the Steiner community had studied sculpture in London, and she said to me, you do realize this doesn't just have to be a hobby, don't you? And I kind of hadn't considered it because I hadn't seen anyone do that, and from that moment I was just okay, let's do it. So I started to research, and I'd never heard of the Royal School of Needlework, but I found it and I went to visit, and I was just like, I am going here.
It sounds very prestigious.
I just decided this is where I'm going. So I moved back home. I'd never studied art. I'd never done art before. So I did art foundation, and it was so funny. There was like not a doubt in my mind. I was just like, this is happening. And it did. And I got in, and I didn't know, like, I'd never heard of gold work, you know, at that point or anything.
Right, okay. So you found the gold work at the Royal School of Needlework then?
Yeah. So you studied like different elements of embroidery, different traditional techniques. And then you got to sort of find your own way with them, and
and so I guess, because like one of the advantages of doing like embroidery is it's kind of quite a portable craft. You know, you needle and thread and a piece of cloth and whatever, you can kind of do it wherever. So it's got quite a good advantage in that respect. Some crafts are very much like you need machinery and space to set up. But,
definitely. I was definitely grateful of that. Like when I graduated, I hadn't really considered that, but I moved from the Royal School of Needlework. I did a year in Falmouth, so I was studying with ceramicists and people who did, you know, jewelry and glass. And it was only after I graduated I thought, gosh, if you need a kiln, things like, it's a completely different story.
Cool. But I guess doing the stitching, there's a lot of work with your hands, and you have to, I would imagine, because you've been doing it for quite a few years now, that you have to look after yourself in respect of your hands and your eyes as well, because they're quite important for what you do. Do you have any kind of I don't know, exercise or something you do to like make sure that your hands are kept well?
No, I suppose I don't really.
Right, okay.
It just feels like a very natural thing to do with them. I find it, like, just in general, I have to be doing something with my hands. Like I've always hold off for twiddling with my hair. Like I have to.
I can't do that.
So right now I'm holding Yeah, you don't have that option.
Unfortunately not.
Like I'm holding a mug, like I have to have something in
Mm,
my hands.
mm, mm.
Yeah, no, I nothing in particular. It's more like my body and my mind and my energy levels. It's more, if
Yeah.
I'm doing a very big project, it's more like sort of remembering to just rest when my body tells me to rest, I suppose, and stop and not, there's always a risk, isn't there? I think when you're a crafts person using your hands and your body to make something, that you can become a machine.
Yeah.
You're human.
Yeah.
But I think that's a real thing.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I can't remember when I first met you, but I remember seeing you at sort of local show in Shrewsbury where you were embroidering bow ties and stuff, and it's been fascinating to see your journey since then to where you are now, because you've developed quite a lot in the types of work you're doing, become more experimental and kind of making larger art pieces and that kind of thing.
Yes.
And I know, obviously, like during lockdown, which probably suited your kind of need to be isolated and also being a bit introverted. It probably, I think, suited you quite well, because I know you're living out on the Welsh border at the moment, and that was probably a good opportunity for you to really like hone in on what you were wanting to do. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Because I know you've done a lot of like experimentation with different stitches and stuff, and sort of building up new designs during that time. Have you got any there that you can show us at all, or can you describe the sort of things you've been making?
I can tell you about the project I'm just starting. That's probably a good.
Yeah, go on then.
So it's so funny. It just seems like the things that are drawn towards me seem to be getting bigger and bigger projects, like very large scale, really quite ambitious, like things that really push me. The project that I'm just starting at the moment is for a hotel, and it's 6 pieces that are each 120 centimeters square.
Okay.
So huge, like really, really huge. So I love working on stuff like this because it makes me sort of like really reimagine and push and have to like decide what's really important in something, rather than if you have complete control, like over scale or budget or time or something, then maybe you can be more, especially coming from, even though I really love, obviously, like what's important to me is the sort of questioning and experimentation. There's still a little part of my brain from RSN days of like, this is the right way, this is what it is. Like, you're told, you only have this budget and it's got to be this size, and you have to rethink. So what I'm working on at the moment, I don't know how well these are going to show up. What I'm working on at the moment, I've hidden myself view, is so I think they're going to be like this. So they're all different. They all have a slightly different vibe. But basically, the black will be screen printed.
Okay.
And then this metallic, which will be copper, I think, will be hand stitched. Okay. So it's finding sort of like, it makes you decide like what's important in a piece. And for me, it's about like line and repetition and movement. And then using like how it's about line. I think line is really, really important. So it's about how I can use print and stitch as two different line, I suppose.
That's very exciting.
That it creates. So I'm just sort of doing the final designs on that. But so this will be the 3rd massive project that I've done.
Okay. Going places.
So the first one was right at the start of lockdown, and that was like real baptism of fire. Like the biggest piece before that was like 40, maybe 60 centimeters big.
Okay. Do you enjoy doing the larger pieces, or is that like almost like a bigger challenge in terms of not only the scale of it, but just sort of like, because obviously working on that scale, you don't necessarily get to see the whole thing all at once because it's so big. Because it's such a fine process that you're doing and you're focusing on one little area. Is that more of a challenge to do that than a sort of more smaller scale piece?
That's a really good question. Yes, it's massive challenge, and I love that at this stage in my life and my career. I want to be pushed. I want to be like pushed out of my comfort zone. I want to grow and like see the potential of technique, but of me like as well, you know. And I find that much easier when other people ask me to do things that's maybe slightly impossible.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily do that myself. At the same time, I recently did a commission that was a lot smaller. It's like I think about 20 centimeter circle.
Okay. Yeah.
And at the time beforehand, I thought, oh, I don't want to end up doing like going forward. I don't want to do loads of these, you know, I want to do big ambitious stuff. But I absolutely loved it because you have to, I think I want to do both, to be honest, because you have, like when you're working on that scale, it means you can think about the intricacies, and I did a lot more sort of technical traditional stitch on it, which obviously I can't do on a big piece.
Well, it's good to have a mixture, a variety of work, isn't it? You know, sort of keeps the mind active.
Definitely. And my own work at the moment, I'm working on something different, which we can chat about if we want, very different from this. And I listened to a brilliant Design Nation talk about, you know, upscaling your work. And so I've been allowing myself like to start on a smaller piece and then create a collection each piece, so get bigger.
Getting bigger.
Because I'd love to create like really, you know, whereas these commissions have to be a compromise and find a different way. Really epic, intense.
Is that your dream project, just to do something ridiculously enormous? If someone was paying you to do it, you'd do a giant one.
I think so. I think I really love, do you know the painter Agnes Martin?
No. I'm not familiar, I must admit.
So I think my dream is to create work that makes people feel like her work.
Okay.
You feel?
Okay.
So you could look at them and think they're very simple, like they're lines,
right,
and repeated lines on a large scale. Some are made with paint or, you know, something, but some are made with like using a different kind of masking tape and using kind of lines, you know, different straight lines, different quality of line.
Right.
And if you took one line on its own, it's incredibly sort of simple. But the way that she creates almost like this like universe of these lines, get this sort of like immersion, and they're big as well, so you get sort of like, I think there was a feeling that there's some quotes from her about sort of almost like she's painting like happiness or peace.
Okay, very nice.
And not in a sort of twee-boat way, but that sort of stillness, that feeling of like, and I think that's my dream, is to create pieces that that do that there's this like complexity, and I really love the idea of complexity, like sort of the scientific term of it as well, of like it's one individual thing sort of becomes larger than the sum of its parts.
Okay.
I think that I would like to see how massive that could be. And
cool.
Until you make something, you don't quite know, do you, if it
no, that's it. It's sort of, sometimes you imagine things, but then when you come to do it and make it practically, it somehow never quite looks like you imagine it's
exactly
could go in an entirely different direction.
so true. Like I really love, do you know I don't know if you know the poet and writer Kay Tempest. Well,
I've heard some of her work. Yeah.
Well, there's a beautiful book that they've written called On Connection, and they talk about like how I wish I could remember the quote, it's so good. They talk about how it's like it's very easy to judge or criticize artists unless you try and do it yourself,
right? Okay. Yes, chasing
this idea that like you're never quite realizing exactly what the perfection of it almost like morphs on the way out into the real world.
And I guess that striving for doing better the next time is what keeps people going, isn't it? It's like if you're satisfied with what you make immediately and you never develop, then you kind of stagnate, don't you? So
well, then maybe it's a product then.
Well, yeah, it could be. Yeah, if it stays the same and there's no change. Yeah. So you briefly hinted on your own work earlier on. What's your current thing? What you're working on at the moment?
I grabbed something that's just behind. I was at the Heritage Craft annual conference.
Yeah.
Demonstrating back in March.
Yeah.
It was so lovely. I loved it. And while I was there, a woman came up to me and said, you're the gold lady, aren't you? You need to see this.
The gold lady.
And handed me a piece of thread. Are they? I'm trying to see if I've got an individual one before I show you what I've done with it. A piece of thread. If in doubt, look on the floor. A piece of thread made from straw.
Oh, okay.
So I've been looking into these, and they I'm sure they must have been made before, but basically for the Swiss hat industry in the 1700s, 1800s, they started spinning straw into thread, and in the 1840s they created the first like thread spinning machine for straw, and they're called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but they're called Schnurly.
Okay. Brilliant.
So it's just two splints of straw that are spun around each other. And it creates beautiful, really beautiful thread, and it just blew my mind.
Right.
It's just like natural gold. Like,
I'm gonna say, is it poor man's gold thread?
It is, but it really is, and it's been used like people who couldn't afford gold would stitch with straw. Using gold work techniques.
Excellent. So
it all comes together, and so this is what I've started to make. I hope this shows up okay.
Ooh.
So I don't know if it shows that well on here.
It looks shiny, like it's metal.
Yeah,
nice.
So what really, there's lots of things that excite me, but what really excites me about it is, I don't know how well this shows up on the screen, but the color changes. So we go from dark to light, and
I mean, on the screen, which I know is not brilliant, is it does look metallic. There's different shades in there, different light catching it and stuff.
There is. There is.
Amazing.
And so the reason that it goes from dark to light is because the darker is the top, so from the wheat, just below the wheat.
Oh, okay, right.
I think this one is and then where it goes lighter is because the first leaf, just before the first nodule where the leaf is, up from there, so the light bit has been covered by a leaf.
I see.
The first leaf of the corn. And that, for someone who's been interested in creating shade and the feeling of movement. The idea that you could like have a thread that grows and naturally has that is just like the most exciting thing to me.
So cool. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, you can see this sort of, hopefully that shows as well, this idea of like complexity from one simple.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to get bigger.
Mm. And so have you made these threads yourself?
No, these ones I've bought. So I've spoken to a few amazing people who know quite a lot about straw. And they've really kindly sent me gifts of things, and also I've bought some as well. And yeah, if it's something I pursue, then I would like to learn how to make my own.
Yeah. Cool. That's really exciting. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, I love that. I look forward to seeing that in reality.
Yeah, I don't justice on screen. But yeah, this dream of like this massive piece, which is basically like a sun, but with all this sort of like evolving movement in it.
Yeah. See, the natural world throws up all sorts of interesting things, doesn't it? It's
Definitely. Definitely, yeah. And I just love the idea of creating work with like gentleness and kindness, and not just like clicking a button and ordering, consuming just for the way it looks, but about the whole process behind it. And
Wow, well, that's exciting times then, if you're developing it again. Every time I speak to you, there's something new happening. That's good.
Yeah, lots of good things.
Well, thanks for that. And just before we sort of finish this, seeing as it's a craft coffee chat, what's your favorite mug? And I know you sort of hinted at it earlier.
It's this blue one. I don't think it's like, it's lovely, and I think it's, I don't think it's like, by a particularly artisan maker or anything. I love how big it is. Like
it's a nice color.
It's a gorgeous
in the hand.
Yeah, and I first got it at the beginning of lockdown, so I feel like it sort of kept me company.
Okay, nice. It's like a good hugger.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got my Jessica Thorne mug today, which of course is orange.
I love the little hint of orange.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's orange in the inside, and then all the joints have got orange on. Yeah, it's a lovely mug. Well, okay, thank you very much for chatting to me, Hanny. It's really lovely to see you and what you're up to now, and it's exciting stuff. And I'll speak to you again in the future when you develop that even more. We can talk more about it. But for now, thank you very much, Hanny. Bye for now. Okay. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Craft Coffee Chats.